these things jump into my head, like Rob Zombie, White Zombie, Rob Zombie, and 9 Inch Nails. And I remember when the Downward Spiral came out, and that was fun. I did appreciate it at the time. I appreciated it because Closer was wild, and then I really liked it when the Fragile came out. I really liked the Fragile, and the other albums. I remember Forest of Equilibrium, which I mentioned this when we were for Cathedral. Forest of Equilibrium. Twisted Sister. Twisted Sister was one of the records that when I went down to my friend's place that day in the 80s, and she played me some AC/DC and some Led Zeppelin. She also played me Twisted Sister. Stay Hungry. She played that for me. And there's also White Snake. White Snake. I'm thinking to myself, it wasn't necessary to bring these down. Was it that necessary? I bought this copy in about 2010, I think. Maybe I bought it in 2005. I can't remember. I bought one City CVD. And I bought these like a couple of years ago. These ones. A couple of years ago for this. I was very excited for this to come out. This is the. I've got it on vinyl as well. Oh, that's why I'm going to bring it down. My Live After Death. If I pause this quickly and bring My Live After Death down. Actually, you know what? I'm going to pause this quickly and I'll just attach the 2 videos. Okay. All right. Very quick. Okay. Oh, that was like just pause it because I wanted to. Actually, I'll show you this first. I'm going to show you this first. So I got this. I bought this a couple of years ago. I was very excited about this coming out. I was very excited about the anniversary edition coming out. And I think it was in 2018 because that's when I was living in Goulburn. 2018 I was living in Goulburn, back in Sydney now. So I was very excited to get these, and but this, I have this. This is an original. This is original issue from 1985 when I bought this from Parks Records in Cairns in 1985, and I had it signed in 2014. Feast your eyes on that. That's quite. I was very quite lucky and fortunate to get this done. And this is the. Before I got this back, I was like, oh, I should have sent a message saying, can I tell you the story? It's a brief story how I got this done. But I just said, could you just say, all of you motherfuckers. I should have got it on now, and I didn't hang on it. Fine. But yes, it's the original, and I've let go of this twice and got it back. It's done. What happened was one night in 2014. No, one night in about 2014. When I was living at Petersham, I went out with my good friend Dagmar. Went out with her, and we went out to the Hard Rock Cafe. We went to the Hard Rock Cafe in Sydney, Darling Harbour, right? And she knew, and there was a few guys there that she knew. So at some point during the night, we ended up. They joined our table, we joined their table because she knew them, and we were hanging out there. And then there was this other girl at the table, and we're talking, and conversation, and then she says, I've got a really famous uncle, and we're like, oh, who? She's like, I don't know what to say. And we're like, you got to tell us now. I mean, you said you got to tell us. She's like, oh, I don't know, what should? And she's like, we're like, come on, who's your uncle? And she paused and she went, Adrian Smith. And we're like, I'm Maiden. She's like, yes. So we're like, Adrian Smith is your uncle. Adrian Smith is your uncle. She's like, Adrian Smith is my uncle. It's my uncle. So I think everyone, she said, I can get whatever you want signed. I can get whatever you want. And I can't say her name. I can't say her name because she's. When she got this back to me, she said, just because I put a post on this about I haven't been on Facebook for ages, but I put a post about this on Facebook, but I didn't mention her name. She said, can you not mention my name because I can't get it done anymore, and yeah, it's just a bit more trouble now. So can't mention her name, but that night. So the next day, or a couple of days later, she said, if you want anything signed, just come to Frankie's Pizza, which was the best rock and roll joint in the Sydney CBD. Now the fucking metro line's going through, and don't get me started on that. And so the next week I rocked up to Frankie's with this, and the 3 or 4 other guys that had been there that night rocked up with something as well. I departed ways with this for 4 years after that, because I didn't get this back till 2018, just 'cause she was moving around a great deal. She was moving around a lot. Went over to England. She sent it to England. She said, I take all this stuff very seriously, very, very seriously. Went on a plane to England, and they signed it over there. And it's actually surreal to me. It's actually very surreal. I'm quite grateful to have this, but it was very surreal. And she said, and so I didn't see this for 4 years. Then I got it back, and it was wonderful, wonderful, and that was really cool. I put a stack of CDs down here, but very complicated with music I am, and look, I picked this up a year or 2 ago. Haven't opened it yet. When I want to hear it, I pretty much stream it on YouTube. Not opened yet, but that's a great album. This is a very good album by Yes. This is a very good album. I've actually listened to this, streamed it on YouTube, unopened. This is also a very good album, and as is this. This is with Sammy Hagar. This is actually no, this is with Roth. This is with Roth, and I haven't opened that yet. Now, a couple of years ago, this came out. It's a really good. This is a really good black metal album. Very, very good black metal album. This came out a couple of years ago, and these guys are it's Whiteboard with Love Exchange Failure. It's a very good album. Oh, listen. Okay, so this being an introduction to Iron Maiden, this album was for me. I went back a few years ago to revisit, and there's a couple of tracks of it I don't really like. I haven't worn this t-shirt for a couple of years because a couple of years ago I decided I didn't like Iron Maiden anymore. So some of you are thinking, oh, sacrilege, blasphemy to say that, oh, sacrilege. And I decided I didn't like Iron Maiden anymore. And then with this, there's a couple of tracks like Sun Still. I think Sun Still I don't like that track. The rest of the album I'm pretty okay with. And then what happened after I said like Iron Maiden anymore? I said I didn't like Iron Maiden anymore. I said I don't even listen to them anymore. And then about would be less than a year after that, I started to visit the Iron Maiden albums again. I started to visit them again, and I thought, but I don't like this. I thought, yeah, I'm just curious. I just want to be able to revisit. 6 weeks ago, I went to revisit Seventh Son because it was, I think, my least favourite Iron Maiden album ever. And when it came out, I could not get into it. I tried to get into it, and at the same time as I was trying to get into Justice for All, I couldn't get into it. And Seventh Son was a no-go for me. I cannot play with madness. I love that song. The rest of the album I found very difficult to get into. I didn't understand it, and I had been watching a few videos on YouTube which said, rank the albums, rank the albums in different bands, which I don't like doing anymore. Really, I don't like going to those channels. I don't like going to those videos. I don't like saying the best this is best at and rating this, but I did fall into that for a little bit. At the top of almost every Maiden fan, the Maiden fans, top of almost every list, Seventh Son. 6 weeks ago, I thought, right, I'm going to listen to it. So I went and listened to Seventh Son, and and enjoyed it. Finally, I understood it. And now I can say that I actually like Seventh Son. Is a great album, and I went to revisit Fear of the Dark, not expecting much, because Be Quick or Be Dead, yep. Listen to the album, very good, actually very good. Is it The Apparition, which is a bit drab? The Apparition, a bit drab, but Fear of the Dark is actually a very good album. My favourite Maiden album. Probably, I was about to say Talon Gunner, probably No Prayer for the Dying. I think that's my favourite Maiden album. Oh, and Dance of Death. Dance of Death. Love the cover. Great album. Not so much a fan of track one. Don't like Nico. Is that Nico McBrain doing the intro? One, two, or one. Totally unnecessary. Blaze Bayley albums. Blaze Bayley has no stage presence whatsoever, but those two Blaze Bayley albums are good. Those two Blaze Bayley albums are good. But Dance of Death, good album, great album, and also Book of Souls is great. But for me, we're going to go to the and at the very same time as all this, I mean, back in the late 90s, I enjoyed Miles Davis' Kind of Blue. That's a very good album. And Tori Amos. Oh, and also more recently, Lana Del Rey, Amy Winehouse. She's like the queen of music. Amy Winehouse, my gosh. Amy Winehouse, those albums are marvellous. Back in 2011, I was having the Amy Winehouse on repeat practically, and I thought some of the best songs in the world were on the Frank album, and there they were. It's I knew Robert Palmer, Simply Irresistible. Love those clips. Simply Irresistible. There's two clips, wasn't there? Simply Irresistible, and there was no, that wasn't it. That Devo, the Devo clips used to come on. Rage. Rage. And Travelling Wilburys. Every time I'm driving in the car, I just listen to 2W Westwood, listen to the 80s, because one of the stations in Sydney has gone totally 80s. I think a couple of them have. Because there's nothing memorable about the Zeros really. Not too much memorable about the Zeros and all the teens, whatever you want to call them. All the good music came out of the 70s and the 80s. And the 90s had some good stuff too. And then when you're talking about the 50s, we're talking about the 1910s through the 1960s. Still some fantastic, great cultural music, memorable music. And even the 18th century as well, in regard to classical music. Because classical music is beautiful as well, but the 80s. The 80s, yes, the 80s. And you say, well, what about the 70s? You have Pink Floyd, Lynyrd Skynyrd, and Budgie. Kiss. I can't listen to Kiss because of Gene Simmons. And maybe you're thinking, can you just separate it? I find it difficult to separate the two. Kiss. I've listened to a lot of Kiss in my time. Love Kiss. Yes, well, I used to, and loved certain albums. Kiss. Worked with the guy at Seagull. I worked with the guy at Seagull Sydney. I was a ride operator at Seagull Sydney back in 1997, most of 98. I worked with one of the guys I worked with there was a Kiss fanatic. His name was Grant. He ended up getting a job on the Sydney ferries. It took him a few days to get there, so he really wanted to do a job on the Sydney ferries. He was a Kiss fanatic. He brought in some, I was talking about Kiss one day, and he brought in some VHS tapes and hours of Kiss stuff on it. And take this, watch it for a week. I gave it back to him after. It was very interesting. It was all Kiss stuff. Oh, Pretty Boy Floyd. I discovered Pretty Boy Floyd actually at Frank's place in 1989. Pete, who was a drummer of Sadistic Execution, no name dropping here, Sadistic Execution, Pete, who I've had countless hours of conversation with in his living room. at Ashbury years and years ago, but it's not in Sydney anymore. Pretty boy, I would walk into the house at Ashbury, and because Frank, who I went to school with, Frank, his older brother Pete. Pete is Frank's older brother. I'd walk into the living room and they had Pretty Boy Floyd on vinyl, and then what happened was, that was in 1989, and then 2010 I discovered Pretty Boy Floyd. I discovered Pretty Boy Floyd in 2010. Their albums. Oh, Hardcore Superstar. Hardcore Superstar, very good. Skyscraper, David Lee Roth, yes, Skyscraper. So I remember when Skyscraper came out. Skyscraper. And Whitesnake. Yeah, Whitesnake. Quiet Riot. I mean, I would listen to them in passing. When Skyscraper came out, I loved the title track, and then it wasn't until years later I actually heard the whole album. The whole album. Yeah. So I loved my death metal, I loved my 80s pop, and I loved my, I mentioned power metal before, Halloween. Occasionally I might listen to some power metal. Better Than Raw by Halloween's a good album. Like death metal, I've been listening to a lot of black metal recently. Ella Fitzgerald discovered her music about 2 months ago. Wow, oh my gosh, she's so good. And Starship. So I'll listen to something for a while, and I'll listen to it, but then, without realising it, I'll move on from it. Not because I don't like it anymore. It's just I'll move on from it to something else, and then all of a sudden, a few months down the track, 3, 6 months down the track, I'm like, oh, I haven't listened to that for a while. But then I find it hard to get back to it because it reminds me of the time I listened to it. And that's my very complicated relationship with music. There's albums I just can't listen to. I mean, it's highly unlikely I'm going to take the shrink wrap off this. Roth, they said to him, do you really want to keep these? Because they wanted to sharpen up the vocals for him. They wanted to make it sound good. And he said, that's the way I sounded on the night. Leave it like that. That's the way I sounded on the night. And, maybe I'll leave the video here for a bit. Maybe I'll do something else a bit later. A lot of different types of music. A few different types of music. Oh, and Public Enemy. I got into Public Enemy. I appreciated Public Enemy from time to time in the Beastie Boys. Public Enemy, great album. Public Enemy had great albums. Fear for a Black Planet. Sold their soul to soulless people. Sold their soul to people. Sold their soul to people who had sold their soul to people. Public Enemy. And Public Enemy, I haven't listened to them for a few years now. And then I'll take something from the music. Like I'll be listening to it, and I'll embrace the album, and I'll embrace. I don't really read the lyrics. I just listen. And I always like it when lyrics aren't clear. Like I'm like, what are they saying? And I just try to decipher it for myself. I don't like it all spelled out for me. I don't have to have all my lyrics be clean. I like character about them. Brian Johnson delivers a fantastic amount of character in his vocals. Fantastic. And even though that the Youngs and Malcolm Young, R.I.P. the Youngs writing a majority of the music after was the Razor's Edge album, or they wrote most of the lyrics for the Razor's Edge album, and they give it to Brian and he has to try and make them his own. I actually literally read that recently. I wasn't too sure who was writing all the lyrics, and a couple of days ago, I looked it up, he writes all the lyrics, and Angus and Malcolm did. and Brian has apparently very little to do with lyrics these days, but Brian Johnson does a fantastic job with the lyrics. He can sing. He sings 3 words. He sings a line. It's a whole story. Fleetwood Mac, a little bit of Fleetwood Mac over the years. Bits and pieces here and there. Napalm Death. Frank Zappa. Frank Zappa, very interesting musician, Frank Zappa. The Osbourne, Ozzy's albums. I mentioned that name. Bark the Moon. But with that Metal Madness LP, that Metal Madness vinyl, Bark at the Moon was the first track. That's the one that stood out to me. That first track was the first time. Well, I thought it was the first time I was hearing Ozzy. Apparently it wasn't, but hook, line and sinker. Midnight Charlie Man.